Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Batman vs. Predator 2.
Previously, 3 more assassins after the bounty on Batman were taken out, some more lethal than others. And those 2 new Predators? They're after the one chasing Batman, and one of them got taken out. I don't know anything about alien hematology, but this sucker must be cold-blooded. The final issue's cover is pretty action-packed. Bats swinging in to attack the Predator who's got Huntress by the cape, all happening high above the city streets. It's a really cool scene, almost like something they'd usually save for the comic itself. We begin with Alfred working on a Batmobile, as his boss updates him on the situation, involving killers both terrestrial and otherwise. The last 2 remaining hitmen could still be willing to fulfill the contract on Batman, whether or not they know Toraro is dead. He gets a call from Gordon from a specialized line, and after a brief chat, is headed out on the Batcycle. Sure, it's more exposed than a car, but not only would bulletproof windshields do little to deter the alien hunter, the bike is more maneuverable. I want to be less confined, more free.
Hey, whoa. We already had the conversation about working naked. This isn't Black Label.
Side note, I really dig this Batcycle design. A really good blend of style, practicality, and keeping on brand. Nothing too outlandish or needless kibble to make it look cool or what someone thinks is cool. Anyway, he's on the Gotham streets, and it's not long before he's pursued by Demon Man.
Woo! Motorcycle fight! Good thing Bruce didn't go with the Bat Moped or the Bat Go-Kart. Otherwise, this entire scene would look downright silly.
The chase passes by 2 cops, who take them for Halloween speedsters and call in an APB. Because I guess these are the only people in all of Gotham who can't recognize Batman. Seriously, he brands all his stuff. How do they not know? Anyway, the demon's bike is too powerful to outrun, so Pointy Ears decides it's better to confront him. He deflects ensuing gunfire with his bike, then uses a line to grab Demon Man by the throat, pulling him off his own cycle. Don't know what's up with the scan here, but the machine is sent through a window, its rider hits the pavement, the cops finally recognize Batman, and collect the ex-wrestler, though it's mentioned he doesn't seem to be moving.
What's to worry about? He was on a speeding vehicle when he was suddenly pulled in the opposite direction by a cord wrapped around his neck, and he hit the street after his helmet flew off. If any other hero had done this, he'd probably be dead, but it's Batman, so he's fine. Probably get a little scratch.
The encounter makes Bats fashionably late for a meeting with Gordon, Stalker, and the 2 agents. He keeps to the shadows until it's mentioned they have some experience with the type of creature on the loose. Their plan is to light a new signal, which was either built really quick or was a backup in storage, to lure the Pred where it knows the signal belongs, and thus draw out Batman. For Stalker, it's poetic justice for the officers lost in the theft of the previous signal.
Though the roof now looks absolutely pristine. That cleanup crew might have been traumatized by the horrific sight they saw, but they did a bang-up job either way.
The Dark Knight agrees to be bat bait, and the signal is turned on. Seen by Huntress, quickly realizing the trap being set, as well as the final killer after the $5 million bounty, knife enthusiast Scarlatti, loitering next to his vintage car. Bats activates his scrambler so he'll see the threat coming, and it works as a Predator suddenly decloaks before them. Immediately, one of the agents orders his team to open fire. But there's a problem. It's not the one they're after. Gordon orders them to hold fire, and Batman follows a trail of blood until encountering Huntress. He explains that the possibly dying creature isn't the hunter, rather out to stop it, and the mystery feds have actually aided their real opponent.
Which could have been avoided if, you bothered to mention it to the people with guns out to kill anything resembling their intended target. I could understand if the agents being too secretive didn't sit well with you, Bruce, as hypocritical as that could be. But you told Alfred and a vigilante you're slow to accept, but not Gordon or his right-hand man for this story? Come on!
Oh, but the Bat culpability doesn't stop there. The agents are offended that the Cape is calling the shots, and it probably doesn't feel better when the commish says he's doing a better job than they are. Their true target sneaks up nearby, launching a disc blade at the commanding feds, and Well, the Predator just netted himself 2 more trophies. And speaking of nets, it proceeds to trap one of the sci-fi squad in one and takes off while cloaked. As Bats and Huntress swing to the roof, one of the team is taking count to see who is caught. 4, 5, 6, 7. No one. All personnel present and accounted for.
Oh, good. I guess we all just imagined a guy dressed exactly like us being carried off by a murderous alien killer while crying for help. That's lunch, people. Back in 20.
No, it was Lieutenant Stalker who was allowed to suit up. I guess they had spare armor in his size just in case. Having had enough of the elite team and caring little for what their superiors in Maryland will think, Jim tells them to get off his roof. Batman decides to let Huntress help, and they proceed to her car, followed by Scarlatti as they try to figure out where to find the creature. Having needed a power source for the first signal it stole, Helena recalls seeing a cable when she found it trashed, figuring it was hooked up to his ship. And maybe it's still there. It's the best lead they have, and someone's life is at stake, so they head across the river back to the Palisades. They find the signal and follow the cable, conveniently strong enough to hold their weight as they climb up to the cave it leads into. A noise is heard in the woods, so they rush to investigate, finding the headless remains of Scarlatti. And I gotta say, that was pretty quick. The creature was just with Stalker, so he somehow got alerted to the assassin, tracked him, killed him, returned to the mouth of his cave for a victory pose in front of some pink lightning, and didn't notice his primary target or his +1.
Again, we have the whole hold up the head of my fallen prey with a lightning backdrop shtick. I get it, it looks cool, but feels kind of overdone at this point. Changing the color of the lightning is fairly mild, and I'm not sure why they'd go with that particular color.
The vigilantes climb up to the cave, head inside, only to find the alien ship open and waiting for them. Stalker was cut free, but only to lure Batman inside, and warns them to get out when the invisible Pred knocks him aside and pulls some kind of switch.
It doesn't make much sense to free the bait when the one you're trying to trap is already heading inside. It just means the bait has the opportunity to alert the prey, which is exactly what happened here. Maybe we're supposed to attribute this to the impetuousness of Predator youth.
That switch sealed the doors and has gotten the ship flying, while the owner starts attacking the capes. Bats activates his scrambler, something he should have done when he entered the cave, let alone an enemy vessel, then throws a smoke bomb to turn the tables, able to land some attacks of his own. Huntress poses all saucy-like as she's realizing that there's one thing she has in common with Fangface. They both like blades, and uses some of its own weapons against it. Weird how Bats' narration captions are now suddenly colored like Huntress's all of a sudden. But anyway, the vigilantes don't let up, and it's after taking an arrow to the neck and getting slapped repeatedly with a batarang, the creature activates an electric field to give himself some breathing room. With the vigilantes down, it starts approaching Huntress, whose pose is absolutely natural and comfortable, I'm sure.
At first, Helena felt rejected when the Predator just knocked her out and left her behind, but now it feels she's worthy to be decapitated. I'd say don't get a swelled head, but there probably won't be time before it gets separated from her body.
Though Batman is still too dazed to do anything, Stalker intervenes by shanking the Predator with its staff right through the stomach. But it doesn't seem all that fazed, and to no one's surprise, Stalker is beheaded.
On the one hand, having someone that we've followed throughout this story get killed fighting the Predator is a good way to leave some kind of impact, and the fact that it was done to help our heroes emphasizes that. On the other hand, it kind of felt telegraphed when he insisted on being part of the strike force, and it's not like we really got to know the guy aside from being loyal to Gordon, and not liking outside law enforcement encroaching on Gotham. Sounds like a role for Harvey Bullock, but no way was he ever going to get taken out in a crossover story, even with dubious canonical status.
As the ship rises higher into the sky, the capes shake off their disorientation and ram into the creature, with the other end of the staff piercing the control panel and causing some turbulence. The Pred collapses, pulling a switch that opens the hatch and releases the 2 crime fighters, high above the docks. "We're going to die."
Falling from a spaceship, dumped out by a space alien hunting me for the honor of taking my head. Definitely within the top 3 on the list of ways I expected to die. But only number 14 on the list of ways I wanted to die.
That's when the second alien craft bursts out of the river to chase after the first one, Batman guessing that its sensors picked up the departure. He grabs Huntress by the leg and snags the ship with the batarang line. It's no treat for her leg or his arm, but they only needed the extra push to safely dive into the river. As the ships leave orbit, the pursuer opens fire on the apparent renegade, blowing him to smithereens in accordance to their code of honor, by Batman's estimation. But more than that, it appears to have been a double explosion.
Oh man, double explosions! What does it mean?
The apparent enforcer of their code seems to have died stopping the hunter, much like Stalker, though Bats figures the feds will glaze over it with some cover story they have at the ready. The water is cold, and so's the wind, meaning the heat wave is starting to break up. Just like us? I never requested a union, Huntress. You forced it.
Maybe Monk was trying to insinuate something more romantic between these two, which I can't say makes much of any sense for the story. Or maybe it's just a play on words, nothing more. And as far as forcing a partnership, it kind of feels like it was necessitated by the circumstances. But hey, loner's got a loner, I guess.
Jim Gordon is in his office listening to a news report that includes the Pentagon claiming the explosions weren't UFOs, but a malfunctioning spy satellite. He doesn't like it, but he also doesn't like that he's just as bad by claiming Lieutenant Stalker went missing during an undercover investigation.
Well, that explanation was pretty quick. The guy wasn't taken out that long ago, and it hasn't been long enough that you've gotten word of his death yet. Even if one assumes he was as good as dead, simply for being taken by the creature, it just seems way too soon to be doling out cover stories when his body isn't even cold. Granted, we didn't see it fall out of the ship, so it's probably space debris, but my point still stands.
He gets a call from an Officer Markham, whose name is almost exactly like the asylum where they throw so many of their criminals, so I'm betting he gets hazed about it a lot. He's reporting a crime matching the Joker's MO, so the bat signal is reignited. Batman is going to answer it because what choice does he have? And the comic ends on a small panel of Huntress, wishing him happy hunting, but it's through the altered color POV of a Predator helmet. Sequel tease!
And that was Batman vs. Predator 2. A pretty good follow-up to the first, and about as bloody and graphic, which makes sense given the non-Bat franchise involved. It had some nice surprises, but seemed to stumble a bit in the final issue.
The fact that Batman didn't mention there was more than one of these creatures on Earth, and that the new ones were after the actual threat, seems like an oversight on Bats' part that makes him at least partially responsible for what happened afterwards. He also neglects to use his scrambler when it would be most useful, on enemy ground. I like it when the Dark Knight is flawed, but this is him basically forgetting stuff that we know he's readily aware of. Then you have instances of him talking about the Predators and their code as if he's read up on it.
Sure, there's stuff you can infer from his experiences, and they may even be accurate, but there seems very little evidence to support claims that Bats seem so certain are solid facts. He doesn't even have any kind of addendum like, "It seems to me," or "from what I've observed." His first-hand experience is fine, but he seems to think it reaches farther than it really does.
Notice how one of the enforcers had small predator skulls on his pauldrons. That could be a kind of badge indicating this is his job. But again, that's speculation, and Batman would say it as if it were fact. Also notice that his dead buddy doesn't have those. I've never read an official Predator comic, so I began to wonder if these two secretive operatives from the agency with experience with the aliens were possibly recurring characters in that series. But probably not, given what happens. Though I could see their high-tech troopers maybe being an existing thing in that universe. For the most part, the story is solid, giving us a good reason why our hero is facing the same kind of threat again, but try to stay faithful to whatever rules the Preds live by. I don't think the heat wave was much of a factor. It just seemed like something that happened to be affecting Gotham. Maybe it was symbolic of the increased heat for Batman, hunted by an alien and a bunch of assassins, even though he only actually fights one of them, with Huntress handling the other and the rest being offed by other means. The art is good, though I'll lament some of the coloring choices were peculiar at times, and Huntress's posing lent itself to certain indulgences, not helped by how skimpy it is. This was the 90s, so it was fairly common for this to happen, though never why I read comics. which is why this was kind of always my least favorite Huntress costume. And the pacing sometimes felt a little off. For the most part of 3 issues, Gordon is laid up in a hospital. By the end of issue 3, he goes from banged up but clear-headed enough to talk about serious subjects to apparently being fully discharged in issue 4. And then there's the death of Scarlatti, which feels like it should have involved some sort of teleportation. Though maybe you could argue that the Predator intentionally avoided Batman to lure him into his ship and take him to his home planet, for whatever reason.
If you liked the first crossover, I think you might find this sequel just as good. It has some problems, but nothing that's exactly a deal-breaker, at least for me. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.